This is the Level 3 ST from Aventon. It's a high-tech commuter e-bike with tons of security and ride customization features that's also remarkably easy to get on and off of thanks to its step-through frame and low standover height. So what led us to name the Level 3 the best commuter e-bike of 2025? Let's take a ride and find out. Welcome to Electric Bike Report, and thanks for joining me today. I'm John, and I'll be taking you through this review. But first, if you haven't been here before, we've made a name for ourselves by making detailed reviews based on a series of standardized performance tests. When you read or watch our reviews, you're getting real-world data about each bike in addition to our first-hand experience. If that sounds helpful, I'll invite you to subscribe to the channel, and if you end up purchasing a bike after seeing what we had to say about it, please consider using our affiliate link in the video description to help support our channel. But let's lean into the Level and talk about some of its best features, starting off with its motor and pedal assist system. Aventon was one of the first brands to go all in on combining rear hub motors with torque sensors, so it shouldn't be a surprise that they have this part nailed. The Level 3 ST's 500-watt rear hub motor delivers power responsively and adapts quickly when you change how you're pedaling, so it feels a lot like riding a regular bike, just with less effort required. The next big thing to talk about is the ACU, which is a small module with a 4G chip set into the bike's rear triangle behind the seat post. This is what gives you control over the bike's security features. There's a lock for the battery and the rear wheel that you can operate through the bike's display or the Aventon app. And then the app also lets you track the bike's location using the 4G chip. You can set up a motion detection and alarm. You can establish geofencing boundaries to help keep your kids in the neighborhood. And you can remotely deactivate the bike if it gets stolen. It's a lot of cool high-end tech that we haven't seen on most bikes in this price range outside of Aventon's line, so there's a huge amount of value here considering the Level's price that's a little under $2,000 at the time of filming. One last highlight is the bike's handling. It has a really sporty feel with stable cornering and quick acceleration, and in my experience it feels sturdy and stuck to the ground without feeling weighed down. Continuing with a run-through of the Level 3 spec sheets, the bike is powered by a removable 36-volt, 733 watt-hour battery that's fully integrated into the underside of the down tube and locked securely in place. It has an 8-speed drivetrain with a 48-tooth chainring, a 12-to 32-tooth cassette, and a Shimano Altus derailleur operated by a rapid-fire shifter on the right handlebar. The brakes are the AT2 hydraulic disc system from Magura with 2-piston calipers and front and rear 180mm rotors. The bike has 27.5-inch wheels with 2.2-inch Kenda Quick 7.5 sport tires, as well as full coverage fenders. There's a coil suspension fork with lockout and preload adjustment with 80mm of travel, and then the bike's custom saddle is mounted on a suspension seat post with 50mm of travel. There's an integrated LED light system with a headlight up front, and then tail lights with turn signals built into the seat stays. It's also decked out with a high-capacity cargo rack on the rear wheel with a 59.5-pound limit. Up in the cockpit, the Level has a set of 680mm flat handlebars with lock-on rubber grips mounted to an adjustable stem. There's a throttle lever on the left handlebar next to the bike's control panel, and there's also a central color display. A few final details. We weighed the bike at an even 72 pounds, including its 8.5-pound battery. The battery is UL 2271 certified, while the bike itself is UL 2849 certified. The step-through model has two frame sizes, both with a 17-inch standover height, although there is also a high-step model if you're interested. We did a separate review of that version that you can check out elsewhere on YouTube. The Level's total payload capacity is 300 pounds, and the ST model comes in two color options. This one is called Sandstone, but there's also a silver paint job called Glacier Mint. That should take care of all the basics, so let's dive into our test sections and see how this bike performed. My fellow reviewer Griffin does our brake tests, and he used our standard procedure for the Level 3 ST, which means that he pedaled up to 20 miles per hour before applying the brakes, and then measured how far he and the bike traveled before stopping completely. He repeated this process 3 times to smooth out any inconsistencies, and we were left with an average stopping distance of 22 feet and 4 inches, which lines up exactly with the current average for all commuter e-bikes we've tested. These are some pretty powerful brakes, and they've definitely counteracted the fact that this bike is a little heavier than average for a commuter. The first couple times I used them, they actually took me a bit by surprise. There's a fairly long pull before the brakes engage, and there's decent modulation once you reach that point, but I might recommend getting in a bit of practice so you get a feel for how much pressure to apply. The brake levers themselves are one of my few points of critique for this bike. They're made of plastic and they're pretty flexible, so they didn't feel very durable, and they got pretty close to pinching my fingers more often than not. Clearly, this brake system's performance is solid, so I think the brake system itself was a good choice overall, but I do encourage Aventon to use sturdier alloy levers in the future. Otherwise, I was happy with the level's results in this test, so let's keep things moving and see how it did elsewhere. We do our speed test to find out how fast a bike can go, and we also use this test as an opportunity to evaluate the bike's programming and power distribution. The Level 3 ST is a Class 2 e-bike with a 20 mph limit on its throttle and pedal assist system out of the box, but it can be unlocked to Class 3 speeds up to 28 mph through pedal assist using the Aventon app. I pedaled the bike in both modes and also did a throttle acceleration test to see how quickly it could reach top speed. So let's go see what happened. I'll tell you how the bike felt as I was riding, and we can go over the results back here later on. All right, we are here for a Class 2 speed test on the Level 3 ST. So starting things off with no pedal assist, and we're going at I'm gonna say a moderate level of effort here, pretty comfortably at around 12.5 mph, so maybe up toward 13 at times. All right, let's go ahead and go up to eco mode, which is the lowest level of pedal assist. And you can see that there's a slight difference, as usual, between the app and the display here, but overall pretty close. So eco mode, you can hear the motor in the background there, a little bit of a hum, so it's making a difference in the ease of pedaling here. We're going faster, but it still feels pretty light as far as the power output goes. So it feels a lot like just riding the bike without power, just going a little bit faster, and again a little bit easier. So up toward 16 mph here. Looks to be pretty steady. All right, let's go up to sport mode and shift up a couple gears. All right, definitely a lot more power here. I don't know if you could see kind of that first pedal stroke after we switched up. Got a little bit of a punch forward there. Feels really good. So we're actually kind of topping out here at the Class 2 ceiling already, or at least getting pretty close to it. Yeah, kind of between 19.5 and 20 here, depending on my pedaling and the path. But it feels really good in this setting. Let's go ahead and go up to turbo mode. I wouldn't really expect anything different, just since we're kind of already hugging 20 mph, and yeah, that seems, again, pretty consistent. So, all right, we'll call that the Class 2 test. Let's turn around and do a Class 3 pedal test, and then we'll check out the throttle later on. All right, we are back for a Class 3 speed test here on the Level 3 ST. Starting off in eco mode this time, and kind of right in that same zone where we were in the Class 2 test with this setting, around 16 mph or so. All right, let's go ahead and go up to sport mode. So, with the higher speed limit here, I'm expecting the bike to just have a little bit more room to breathe, so there'll be a little bit more differentiation between sport and turbo modes here. So yeah, we're kind of up toward 20 mph, which is where we landed in the Class 2 test. And again, that does feel pretty comfortable for this setting, so all is good. Let's go ahead and bump up to turbo mode then and see what this thing can really do when you open it up. All right, picking up nice and quickly. That motor is powerful and very responsive, and really with not much effort at all, I am hitting the Class 3 ceiling here. So, I am pedaling actively, but I'm not working hard. I'm not putting a lot of effort, pressure on the pedals. And you can see that we're going pretty quickly here, but everything looks good. Let's go ahead and see how quickly the throttle gets the bike up to speed. All right, and the last thing that we're going to do here is check out the throttle's acceleration, see how quickly we can get up to 20 mph. Let's go ahead and wait for this thing to zero out. There we go. All right, let's start in 3, 2, 1, go. All right, nice, gradual start there. Not too punchy, I like that. But we're picking up steadily. 18, 19, and 20. Okay, looks good. Let's bounce back to the studio and talk about everything. To run through those numbers from the pedal tests again, I started off with no pedal assist at a moderate pace of 12.6 miles per hour. My average speeds in the Class 2 test were 16 miles per hour in eco mode, 19.8 miles per hour in sport mode, and 20 miles per hour on the nose in turbo mode. In the Class 3 test, eco and sport modes were essentially the same, with 15.9 miles per hour and 19.8 miles per hour respectively. In turbo mode though, I shot up to 27.9 miles per hour with the full power of the motor behind me, showing that this bike has no trouble at all reaching its limits, regardless of whether it's set to Class 2 or Class 3 speeds. Now, the 3 pedal assist settings are not limited in speed, so in theory I could have reached the limits in eco mode with enough pressure on the pedals. The higher settings just make the job a lot easier. Pedaling in eco felt appropriate for a power saving setting, and it was also great for getting a natural feel where the motor just takes the edge off. In contrast, turbo mode delivered heaps of power to make riding fast a breeze, and then sport mode split the difference but leaned a bit more towards turbo than eco, at least with the bike's standard settings. You can customize the motor output through the Ride Tune feature in the Aventon app. I tested the bike with the default setup, so my results would have probably looked a bit different if I'd made some adjustments with that feature. Just keep in mind that your results will naturally vary from mine, since this bike has a torque sensor that allows its motor output to match your pedaling, and you and I probably pedal a bit differently anyway. Moving on to the throttle test, I like that the bike picked up speed steadily without feeling like it was getting away from me. So all in all, I think the Level 3 did a great job here, and it gets a well-earned 2 thumbs up. The goal of our range test is to see how far a bike can travel on a single charge of its battery. We took the Level 3 ST out to the bike paths and rode it in turbo mode until it ran out of charge to find its minimum range. And then after that, we plugged it in, let the battery recharge, and went out for a second test in eco mode to find its maximum range. Our testers rode 44.2 and 80.6 miles, both of which are well above average when compared to other commuters with 500-watt hub motors that we've tested. The bikes used for comparison averaged 29.9 and 54.7 miles with batteries that had an average of 638 watt-hours of capacity, and battery capacity seemed to be the Level's biggest advantage here. As I mentioned back in the overview section, this bike has a 733 watt-hour battery, so that's nearly 100 more watt-hours than average, so it had enough power to keep it going for significantly longer. The Level's torque sensor also helped it stretch out its charge by allowing its motor output to fluctuate as needed instead of being the constant flow that it would have had with a cadence sensor. I found myself riding in eco and sport modes more often than not, so as long as you're comfortable with a moderate level of effort, I'd expect most riders to get somewhere on the mid to high end of our results. Most commuters we've talked with do less than 30 miles a day, so assuming you're in that range, you should be able to get at least a few round trips out of the battery before needing to recharge. We're really happy with the bike's performance here. It's up there with the best in this category, so it's a great option if you have a super long commute as well. And we were also happy to see the included 4-amp fast charger that can have you ready to go in about 5 hours when you do finally need to power the battery back up again. Now let's talk about our fan favorite, the hill test at a place called Hellhole Trail. This path is long and steep with a 12% average grade over 1/3 of a mile. Justin is our test rider for this one. He tested the bike using both its throttle and when pedaling in turbo mode. Just like the speed test, he brought a GoPro along for the ride, so let's see what happened and we can analyze the results back here.
Okay, we are out on the new Aventon Level 3, the step-through version. We're gonna race a chipmunk there. Oh, we beat it. So doing the throttle test, kind of have an expectation of what's gonna happen based on the high step version that we've already done. But I'll walk you through it. So right now, hitting this about 9 miles an hour, 8 point, down to 7.1, 6.7, 6.5, kind of held steady-ish about here on the last one, dropped a little bit below 6. So we'll see where it bottoms out, 5.7, 5.5. So not blowing up that hill, but it is getting me up. Again, this throttle on turbo, me not adding anything to it, making it do all the work itself. Motor, I've been very impressed with this motor that Aventon has done. I'll let you listen to it through this section. for the next steep punchy section, and then as we speed up, so you get a good sense of what it sounds like. You'll hear it a little bit more as we speed up here. Yeah, so the motor is very nice and quiet. Got down to about 5-6 miles an hour there. Let me get past these people. Just on your left here. Thanks. This dog. Just on your left. Thank you. So yeah, so we'll go check the tape. My guess is gonna be right in line with the high step version, and overall feels pretty decent on throttle only. All right, we're back at it now on Hellhole, now doing the pedal test on the level 3 step through version with this torque sensor that is, I'll say it's fairly sensitive, where you really do kind of, it amplifies what you're putting in. I'm gonna try to keep a decent steady pace here at about 11-12 miles an hour through that first section. So again,
you don't get tired, do you?
No, not at all. So now, yeah, kind of held at 11. I'm putting in less than I normally do on a lightweight city commuter. About average, I'd say, for a regular city commuter. Motor feels pretty nice. I'll let you listen here. So yeah, it's still pretty quiet on the motor. Really have loved the feel of this one. Feels nice and smooth, natural as I climb the hill, and we'll see how it does. The last one, the high step, wasn't a barn burner, but had decent scores. Kind of feel the same about this one, where I could have pedaled a little softer, been a little slower, still made it up, or even pushed a little bit more, just trying to keep things consistent. So go to the tape and see how it did.
As you could see, the level 3 had no trouble at all getting to the top. Justin's throttle test took 1 minute and 54 seconds, and he kept a speed of 9.5 miles per hour. That result is only about 2 seconds slower than average when compared with other commuters with 500-watt motors we've tested, so this bike did a great job of keeping up with its competition. Justin's pedal test was faster. He clocked in at 1 minute and 21 seconds with an average speed of 13.4 miles per hour, and that was about 3 seconds faster than average when compared with the same pool of bikes, so once again the level did a solid job. Now, motor torque is one of the primary factors in the pedal test, and the level 3's motor cranks out 60 newton meters of torque. The average torque for the pool of bikes we compared it with was 60.3 newton meters, so I'd say the bike's average results absolutely make sense. The throttle test seems to rely more on peak wattage. The level 3 has a peak of 864 watts, which again is right around average, so its relatively average results make sense there too. Do keep in mind that we did our testing with the standard motor output settings, but there's a small bit of room above the 90% default for the assist parameter, which could improve its climbing performance even more. Regardless, our testing showed that the level's motor is powerful enough to give you the option to throttle or pedal over most hills, and if you do choose to use a bit of leg power to help the motor out, you won't end up wearing yourself out or getting too out of breath. Ride quality is a measure of how a bike feels to ride, and it's a relatively complex topic that incorporates sizing, suspension, motor engagement, the user interface, and in the level 3 ST's case, more unique things like the Aventon app and all the bike's included security features. Let's go out to the bike paths again and talk about some of the basics. I'll add a few more thoughts back here, and then we'll wrap things up with the walkthrough of the Aventon app and the bike's display.
All right, let's talk about ride quality here on the level 3 ST. So I'm gonna kind of start things off in reverse here by talking about some of the additional stuff on top of what we normally discuss. So in this case, that being the security features, I'm coming up into an area that I set as a restricted zone in the geofencing setting within the app that we'll talk about later on. There we go, so that just kicked in. The motor, the pedal assist system is not actually working right now, so I can still ride and pedal the bike, but you know, the motor will not help me out. I can't do anything about that, and there is this alarm that's going off, but we'll ride through this zone, the pedal assist system will kick back on, and then we'll, kind of continue our discussion here. Now, the geofencing is just one of a ton of security features that we've touched on. I'll kind of walk you through the Aventon app later on in this section and go through all of those. But yeah, for now, just kind of wanted to show that off as a big highlight of this bike. It's a really cool thing. But okay, there we go. We got out of the boundary. Let's kick up to eco. Well, let's go up to sport. I like sport mode. Kind of splits the difference between natural and fun. So not that the other settings aren't great, but this is just my preferred in any case. So the level 3 here is a commuter e-bike, of course. The riding position is sporty, but not too aggressive. So, I do have a bit of a bend at the waist. My arms are outstretched here and I'm putting some weight on the handlebars, but it is still very comfortable, and, it's just a good balance, I guess. So there are 2 frame sizes for this bike, and it's recommended for riders from 4'11" to 6'1". Now, I am 5'11", and that's kind of toward the top end of the recommended range for the large frame that we're riding right now. But just where I have everything set feels great, feels very accommodating for someone within that range. There's about 6 inches of adjustment in your saddle height with the seat post, and then you get you can get the ability to change your riding position and the handlebar setup a little bit with the adjustable stem. So as long as you have some Allen wrenches, you can loosen that up and then raise the stem to bring the handlebars up and closer to you if you need to. But as it is, this is about as aggressive as the riding position gets right here. Moving on though, let's see. We've got a suspension fork up front with 80 millimeters of travel to really soften the bumps, which is good since you're putting a little bit of weight on the handlebars here. And then you've got a suspension seat post as well with 50 millimeters of travel to cushion your rear end, which feels very, very good. And that suspension on the seat post is, a little bit different than some of the sort of single coil suspensions like this, instead of the rocker style. A lot of times those feel really springy. They kind of feel like you're gonna bounce off the bike if you hit a bump that's too big, but this one, it really is nice and cushiony. Let's see, as far as the tires go, we've got 27.5 by 2.2 inch street tires from Kenda. So good traction on paved surfaces. They're wide enough to keep the bike feeling nice and stable. And they also do add a little bit of cushion to the ride as well. And then we've got the 500 watt rear hub motor with a torque sensor. As we've talked about, super responsive, kind of, ranges from light and natural to peppy and powerful on the high end there. So, and then of course you can do a lot of tuning through the app. But speaking of the app, let's go ahead and bounce back to the studio. We'll kind of go through a few additional thoughts and details, and then I will see you back out here to go over the app.
So I mentioned that there were 2 frame sizes. The regular size fits riders from 4'11" up to 5'7", while the large size ranges from 5'7" to 6'1". Interestingly, when comparing geometry charts between the step through and high step frame sizes, this one's riding position is set up to be ever so slightly more sporty by a few millimeters here and there, but of course the adjustable stem can offset that depending on your preferences. I'm always happy to see an adjustable stem on this style of bike, as it makes sure you can get a perfect fit. I think this bike's great handling, its range of pedal assist settings, and the responsiveness of its motor are 3 things that came together extremely well to make the Level 3 a true joy to ride. Now, personally, I don't mind swinging a leg over the saddle when I hop on a bike, but this step-through frame really does make it easier to get on and off the bike, and Aventon also did a great job of offsetting the flexibility in the frame with their construction methods. Most of the time, bike frames are made from a bunch of different pieces of material welded together, but Aventon used a method called gravity casting to make the front triangle in a single piece. That's why it looks so smooth and clean. But it's also able to maintain controlled thicknesses, which helps out with stiffness, and that made a noticeable difference in the bike's overall feel. I have one more point of critique to address, and that's the fact that the Level 3's taillights do not function as brake lights. This bike's brake system doesn't have a motor cutoff function, which I think is generally fine on a bike with a torque sensor, as it makes sure you always have power from the motor on tap. But without the motor cutoff feature, there's no way to send a signal to activate the brake lights, and I think that's an important feature on bikes like the Level that are meant to share the road with larger vehicles. That aside, I'm always happy to see integrated turn signals. I love the wheel lock on this bike, as well as the ejectable battery. The ACU module and all the security features I mentioned earlier are really impressive things that we don't normally see on bikes in the Levels price range. In fact, you usually have to spend 2 or 3 times more to get a bike that includes anything similar. The Aventon app is closely tied to the Levels security features, and while you don't have to use it, it really opens up a lot of things that make Aventon's bikes unique. Let's go back out to the paths one more time and go through the app. We can quickly go through the display menu back here, and then we can wrap up the review.
All right, so let's go ahead and go through the Aventon app step by step here. So I've got the sort of main screen, the landing screen pulled up here that shows an image of the bike. It shows the name, which you can customize. There's a little Bluetooth icon to show that we are connected with the bike's display there. So we've got some sort of basic functions here to start. You can see your riding time. So we've put 19 hours and 19 and a half hours on this bike so far, which is pretty cool. We've got an odometer reading of 295 miles, which is almost spot on with what the display reads. But you've got the power button to turn the bike on and off. You have a lock and unlock for the rear wheel, which I will go ahead and show you here. Okay, so you heard that click, and now, all right, the wheel lock engaged. So now I just basically am dragging the bike if I try to move it, and then, oh, bike unlock failed. That's different. Okay, so I think I was just kind of like rolled forward a little bit. So as soon as I pulled that back, it kind of released the tension, and then the lock disengaged. So now we're good to go. That's actually pretty cool to see. We've also got the ability to turn the lights on and off from here. Now there is a button that says more settings. We're going to go into that a little bit later on. That's kind of where the bulk of everything is, but let's run through some of the other peripherals as well first. So we've got a battery charge indicator here, which does match the display. If we go into that, you can see the state of health. So this keeps track of, you know, the health of your battery as you run through the charge cycles. That will naturally decrease, just like it does with your cell phone, that sort of thing. And, you know, eventually when you do need to get it replaced, that will, you know, let you know about that. We have the ability to eject the battery from the down tube, but if I do that, it'll shut the bike off, so I'm not gonna show you that. But that is a cool feature of this bike. If we go back to the main screen here, so we can adjust the pedal assist setting from here if for some reason you don't want to use the buttons off to the side. And then if you tap on the assist level there, this is the Ride Tune feature where you can customize the motor output. So this is a really cool panel. You basically get 3 sliders that adjust different parameters of the how the bike operates and feels. So you've got max torque, assistance, which is kind of like the peak wattage of the motor, and then pedal response, which is the sensitivity of the torque sensor. And then you've got this diagram that kind of shows the balance between those 3 things. And then as I go through the settings, you can see that diagram changes. So there's sort of different profiles for each mode, which, you know, backs up how they feel. You can, you know, slide those around just with a touch of finger, and you can see that that will adjust the diagram there as well. And then if for some reason you know, screw that up or whatever, you can hit the factory reset button to go back to the original settings. Let's see, moving on though, we've got a map with the GPS function. So again, with the 4G chip in the ACU module, that just allows the sort of cell network to figure out where you're located there. And you can see that we've got a little address to show nearby as well, which is pretty cool. If we back out of that, we've got some basic ride data here. So the max speed of the bike that we've gone, which I assume is downhill, average speed, your total calories burned, and the total CO2 reduced, which is pretty rad. And then we've got the ability to find a Aventon dealer nearby. So as we go into this, you're going to see a map, and you'll see that there are just tons and tons of pins there, and then we do have plenty of options around as well. We've got a maintenance function that basically just keeps track of everything. Now, you know, we do our own maintenance, so we don't really need to worry about these things. But if I owned this bike and, you know, I had it in for service, then that would allow me to track, you know, basically the amount of time before I need to bring it back into the dealer there. And then we've got a diagnostics function. So I actually ran through this a little bit earlier, and it's basically a series of checks. You can hit the button. There's a voice prompt to kind of walk you through everything. It's very easy. You do have to do a little bit of riding, but just for a few seconds each, and then it just kind of runs through all of the electronics and the main e-bike systems just to make sure everything is functioning properly. And then, of course, you can reach out to Aventon for support there if you need that. And then basically the bottom of the app, this sort of tray shows all your main navigation through the app. So if we go over to the record button, you can see basically a summary of the rides that we've been on today. Now, because of the integrated 4G chip, the app can also track your rides automatically. So you can see here the blue is what I've tracked. I had that pulled up when we were doing the ride quality section earlier, and then the gray is what the app has tracked kind of on its own as I've been riding and filming without the app pulled up. And then you can see, you know, distance that we've gone, total calories burned, riding time, and maximum speed just within that for today. And then you can also see that for the month, the year, and then all time. So that's pretty cool. And that interestingly seems to also track my use with other Aventon bikes as I've worked here at Electric Bike Report. So that's pretty cool too. But if we hit the go button in the middle there, so that's what we were looking at earlier, where it will, you know, keep track and show you up-to-date ride data as you're riding. You can switch the rotation of the display if you want, and there's a night mode as well there. But then over to the right of that, there's a Discover panel that is Aventon's own sort of social media-like feature where you can, you know, see things posted by other Aventon e-bike owners and interact with them. Similar things to other social media platforms where you can follow those riders and they can follow you in return. You can see, you know, rides that they've posted, photos that they've shared of their bike, that sort of thing. So pretty cool. I've only seen that in a couple of other places. There's actually like a little news panel up here, which is pretty cool as well. It just shows kind of some updates as far as Aventon products and whatnot. But then moving on to the rightmost panel, which is called Me. So that's your personal profile there. We've got some similar things that we've seen in other panels, like the maintenance, the diagnostics, that sort of thing. You can change your password, you can pair, unpair, you can see the dealer network there. There's sort of a little gamified thing where you can earn awards as you continue to ride. And then this is also where you can connect this app with Apple Health and Strava. So actually, because we tracked rides earlier, I'll go ahead and show you that. So if I close out of the app and then open up Strava here, that should sync the rides that I rode earlier. Yeah, there we go. So that's one that I saved within the Aventon app, and then it just basically pulled that data over to Strava, and I do then have to save it here as well for it to show up. But yeah, that's pretty cool. Let's go back to Aventon though, and we will go back to the main panel and then talk about the more settings. So this is again kind of the bulk of all the security stuff here. So we've got screen brightness we can adjust. There's the auto power off setting. So, you know, if you forget to turn off your bike, you can set how long it'll take before the bike shuts off automatically. You can, again, change the pedal assist level and go into the ride tune feature there. You can change the maximum speed of the bike. So I don't know how far down it will go. I think it's 12 miles per hour off the top of my head, but I know that, you know, it starts at 20 when you get the bike. And then if you want to increase it from there, you have to basically just agree to this thing that, you know, you're indicating that, hey, okay, I can do this legally where I live, just since everywhere is different. And then, of course, the maximum speed is 28 miles per hour. And then, of course, you can switch between your units there. So the lower section of this page is all the big security stuff. We've got the alarm that you can activate or deactivate. You can set the wheel lock to automatically engage if the bike is powered off, which personally I really like that. Security verification. So this is with the 4G chip and the ACU connectivity there. If you Well, actually, I'm sorry. Let's back up and talk about IoT service, because that's a component of this. So IoT service is basically the subscription for the technology services there and the 4G connectivity. So basically, with this, you get a year free of the service, and then after that, it's $20 annually or $2 a month. And this gives you the ability to, again, always find your bike. You can
disable it remotely if you want to. And then basically how that works with the security verification is you can set a period of time, and if your bike does not automatically connect to Aventon servers through that service, then it will just automatically deactivate the bike, and then you have to contact Aventon to undo that to re-engage the bike. But just another extra layer of security if you choose to have that. And then this is the lost mode, so if somebody runs off with your bike, you can deactivate it remotely from there as well. Hopefully I did a decent job of explaining that. Unusual activity detection, so that's basically, if you leave your bike outside of a shop or something and the wheel lock is engaged, you have it all secure. If the bike gets jostled or starts moving around, this will let you know about that. And you have a couple of sensitivity levels, which is very cool. You can change the bike's password here, which I'm actually going to, if I remember, I'll show you at the end that I did set up a password here, which is nice to have, and you can access that without the app. Now, the geofencing, we saw that work earlier in the ride quality section. So this was the prohibited zone that I had set up, but there's also allowed areas. So let's switch over to that, and I'll go ahead and show you what it's like to set one of those up. So if I just tap the plus button, you can see we're here in this little park, and let's say that this is your neighborhood, and you let your bike or your kid borrow the bike, and you want to just keep them within the neighborhood. You can basically select from a bunch of different shapes for the perimeter of the area. You can change there we go. You can change those boundaries. It's a little sensitive, you gotta hit the pins just right, but and then you can move the whole boundary around by moving that center pin, and then if you save it, then that becomes an allowed zone, and if the bike exits that zone, then the security or the pedal assist system will shut off like it did when we entered the restricted zone earlier. So very cool feature there. Let's see, back at the more settings panel, we've got the ability to update the firmware. So I just went through that this morning. We can see that we are up to date with everything. You can back up and restore all of your settings. Again, you have the IoT service that we talked about. There's a transport mode, so that basically is a power saving feature. So the ACU module does draw power as it tracks your location, and this basically just limits its ability to do so. And it's great if you're moving the bike around, so it's not constantly pinging you about it. And then of course you can kind of unpair from the bike if you need to there. But that's kind of everything. Lots to talk about there, a lot of cool features. But let's go ahead and bounce back to the rest of the review and wrap things up.
All right, so let's go ahead and walk you through the display. I wanted to mainly show off the password requirement that I didn't show you in the app walkthrough a second ago. But anyway, so I set this up to be up to up, down, down, left, right, and you can get into the bike. And I do recommend setting that up since the wheel lock and battery lock are accessible through the display menu here, just for overall security. But looking at the main display here, so we've got a speedometer, we've got a light indicator, we have our battery charge over on the right. We also have our pedal assist level that you can see is color coded. And you can also see the distance you've gone in each pedal assist mode, which is pretty cool. There's an odometer reading there. And then if you hit the power button, you can scroll through some other ride data. So there's average speed, max speed, total time riding, and total CO2 reduced. But then, with the button pad here, so the central power button is in the middle. We've got the pedal assist adjustments on the top and bottom, and turn signal buttons on the left and right. So if I hit those, you can see the arrows on the display as well. And then to enter the bike's display menu, you just hold the plus and minus buttons. You can clear your trip computer in there. You can eject the battery here, which I think I'll end with actually, just so you can hear and kind of see that a little bit. Bike lock is the wheel lock, which I demonstrated in the app walkthrough earlier. Display unit allows you to change your from metric to imperial if you want. Brightness obviously changes the display there. Auto power off, which is again available through the app, how long the bike stays on if you just leave it and you don't turn it off. Here's where you set up the password, so you can choose to enable or disable that and then change it there. We'll go ahead and enter the current password and then change it to something else. There we go. It's all confirmed there. And then if we back out of that, you can see error histories. That's just some codes there. You can clear that if you want to. system info, which I'm not going to go into, and then connect to app. This pulls up a QR code so you can pair easily and quickly with the Aventon app. But then I guess the last thing I will do then is go ahead and eject the battery so you can see it will shut off the bike as we do that. All right, and that's it.
Aventon is a company that's done a great job of innovating and pushing the industry to improve. We've generally been big fans of this brand's e-bikes for a while now. Their last generation of bikes went all in on combining rear hub motors with torque sensors, and lots of other brands followed their lead. The ACU module is kind of the next big leap forward, but I think the Level 3 ST is a great example of the other, less obvious ways Aventon has evolved. This bike looks clean, it rides remarkably well, the geometry feels spot on, the motor delivers power extremely responsively, and the combination of the ACU and the app make the whole user experience feel extremely high-tech and connected. We'd like to see sturdier brake levers and functioning brake lights in the future, so it's not a perfect bike, but it does get pretty close. It did a great job in our testing with average to excellent results across the board. Its standard programming is intuitive with well-balanced power levels, it stops safely and effectively, it can pedal or throttle uphill confidently, and it has the ability to cover multiple extended commutes on a single charge. Based on my experience, I'd recommend the Level 3 ST to riders who want a bike that's easy to get on and off of, that can go on a few long rides before needing to recharge, that feels sporty, and also that rides a lot like an analog bike. Whether you're looking for a cool bike to cruise around town on or a dedicated daily ride to work or school, this is one I highly recommend checking out. If you want to take a closer look, you can read more about our experience with the bike in our review at electricbikereport.com, or head over to the bike's page on Aventon's website using the 2 links in the video description. If you decide to pick one up for yourself, please do use that second link when you make a purchase to help support us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know your thoughts down in the comments section. But thanks for taking a ride with me today. Again, I'm John with Electric Bike Report, and this is the Aventon Level 3 ST.